What brought you to this event tonight?
I'm actually an ambassador for the Dartmouth Political Union, and we're the organization that's hosting the event. So for that reason, it's like one of my responsibilities as an ambassador, but also I'm just really interested in hearing him speak.
I'm helping run it, so I'm a DPU ambassador, so yeah.
I'm actually an ambassador for the Dartmouth Political Union, so yes, that's why I'm here.
I have heard about Peter before, and I'm excited because it's been something I've been thinking about a lot in classroom and talking with my parents and friends a lot about.
I was very intrigued by the reverse Q&A aspect of it. I don't know very much about the speaker, but just searching him up really quickly, I think he definitely has a very different perspective than I do on life, and I'd love to learn more about it and engage in just a productive conversation.
I'm a member of the DPU who's hosting this event. It's a topic of interest to me. As someone who's moderately politically interested, I suppose. So.
What are you expecting?
I know it was advertised as like an interactive event, and also I partook in like a little interactive thing earlier this afternoon where two of my peers and I were asked a series of questions about abortion, and it was like interactive, like where you stand, like agree or disagree, and you move from one side to the other. So I'm expecting kind of like interactive activities like that maybe, as well as just like some informative speaking too, possibly.
I'm not so sure, to be honest. I know a little bit about the background of the speaker, but I've never had an interactive talk before, so I'm not quite sure what's going to occur.
Being that I know what the format is, I'm expecting more of like a conversation with the audience and just like a nice back and forth on like what people think what cancel culture like is here on Dartmouth campus or in college campuses in general.
I am expecting uncomfortable conversations, and I'm expecting hopefully people will feel challenged. Yeah.
I'm expecting just a reasonable question and answer session, a reasonable talk. I don't expect it to really be that hectic or really that revolutionary. I think at most we'll have a few provocative questions from some audience members, but that's about it.
A slightly different question. What are you hoping for?
I'm hoping that this raises awareness for people who attend, people on campus, like to question how much free speech we really have on campus.
I don't know, I guess I'm hoping for a talk that will make me think and bring up some new ideas and lead to me understanding both ideas in the general world and of the student body here better.
Hoping everything goes smoothly. I hope that there is active audience participation, and I just hope that different perspectives can be portrayed and expressed throughout this event.
I'm hoping that people are open to disagreeing opinions, and that we use this as an opportunity to learn from each other.
Well, I'm definitely hoping to learn something. I think I am hoping to walk away with maybe a different perspective on a lot of the things that I disagree with him about.
I'm hoping for a reasonable explanation of both sides of the argument, and one that, if it doesn't change my mind, at least challenges my preconceived notions. Yeah.
Do you feel free to express your opinion about controversial subjects in the classroom?
I think it depends a lot on the professor. If a professor creates a welcoming environment for all opinions and creates a decorum of respect in the classroom, or other times, sometimes professors openly share their political opinions and state their opinions as the only right way, and that really censors the classroom and doesn't allow for disagreement. And college campuses in general, I feel like a lot of people our age align more to the left, so it can be hard to have opinions that aren't aligned with the left's opinions, but a lot of times students are respectful.
I think it depends on the classroom, and it depends on the teacher and the students there. I think I feel comfortable expressing most ideas so long as I do so in a sensitive manner. Overall, I feel comfortable expressing most ideas. Yeah.
Yes and no. I feel like it really depends on what's happening, what's going on, who's there, how comfortable I'm just feeling about the topic at hand myself and how it affects me personally, and just my stance in the environment that I'm in. So it really differs from class to class, from audience to audience.
Yes, but I don't think that those opportunities present themselves that often.
My opinions, yeah. I don't think I'd be free to express every opinion, but certainly the ones that I hold are not so outrageous. I think Dartmouth is a relatively free community, for the most part, yeah.
I think it definitely depends on the type of classes. I take a lot of sociology classes and a lot of government classes, and there's definitely a expected point of view, and I think that I think personally I feel very comfortable, but I can see why other students may feel uncomfortable.
If you feel like you can't express yourself, is it coming more so from other students or is it coming from teachers and faculty?
I haven't had any issues with faculty here. It probably would come from other students or just me personally just not wanting to talk.
Okay.
I think I'm more so students.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I really hope that you write down what you want to talk about on that board there, and we'll be seeing you in there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. If you're not familiar with the DPU, we are the premier nonpartisan political club on campus, and we're committed to promoting free discourse and mutual understanding. As part of this, we bring guests like Peter to campus to explore pressing questions and give students an opportunity to hear from both each other and domain experts. With that, Peter, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. This is going to be a fun night. All right, so here's what we're going to do. These are a combination of claims my team and I have come up with. Biological males should not compete in women's sports. Who wants to talk about that? Get 2 votes. 1, the only remedy for past discrimination is present discrimination. Okay, third trimester abortion should be legal. The consideration of race should be removed from the college admission process. I think we have a winner, but we'll see. America is racist. Dartmouth Safety and Security, SNS, should be abolished. 0. Wow. I assure you that is not the case at the other campuses we have visited. My body, my choice, quote unquote, should be consistent for vaccines and abortion. Speech is violence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. I like how the camera guys put their hands up for this too. Okay. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We just look at the distribution. So we know from the distribution that ones can be wiped off immediately. I was the lone vote on that. I actually find that to be a fascinating question, but that's just me. And yes, the word abolish was chosen specifically as opposed to defunded. You get 1 vote for the game we're going to play. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. Who wants that? 5. The consideration of race should be removed from the college admission process. I also try to write these on the same side too. America is racist. My body, my choice should be consistent for vaccines and abortion. Okay, 1 and 2. Speech is violence. America is racist. Who wants it? And when there are ties, I put them in parentheses so I'll know that they're ties. And speech is violence. Okay, well, that's wins. Okay. The consideration of race should be removed from the college admission process. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Okay. Well, I have to say, I've done this a bunch of times today at Dartmouth. Every single Dartmouth person has only moved after I've said moved. So that's already, we're already being quite impressive.
Generally speaking, I'm a fan of removing race when it comes to considering anyone for an opportunity in general.
By putting everyone on an equal playing field, you're not accounting for the fact that the playing field is so very unequal.
Did he say anything that convinced you to move one line to slightly agree?
Not yet.
How politic. What kind of argument would you have to hear to convince you to move one single line to slightly agree?
If you could show me that the only way to account for people's kind of privilege, if you will, would be to do it systemically rather than case by case, then I would, yeah.
The thing he was looking for was impossible, so I gave him what
It was impossible. Why was it impossible? Why aren't you on the strongly agree?
I think to be clear, I don't think decisions should be made using race ever, but I think,
Well, that right there.
yeah,
Well,
yeah. The
Okay. What do you need to see to move to disagree?
Just to disagree that
Just to disagree.
that systemic racism is still a problem. We still need to account for it in education somehow, but that there might be a more implicit societal way to do it instead of in education. Maybe that it is a institutional problem that's best served through other institutions, something like that. Because I would still have to not agree with them. I would just have to disagree with them a little less.
What if they said, we're going to give everyone, regardless of race, a public education of the first rate and make sure that there's equal opportunity for all? Would you change your mind?
Simply, there is no equal opportunity without equal outcomes. Equal opportunity requires because how else do you measure the opportunity being equal?
I think equality of outcome is a poor measure of equality of opportunity.
All right, cool, thanks. All right, everybody, give them a round. Quote, "My body, my choice," unquote, should be consistent for vaccines and abortion. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Or you can stay on the neutral line.
Whether you decide to vaccinate yourself or to have an abortion should generally be up to you.
Abortion is an individual's decision. That might involve it's your body, but it's in your choice, but the consequences aren't limited just to you.
But with abortion, they're not either because you're talking about another existence.
I think that's debatable at a certain point, yes.
The burden on a person getting a tiny jab in your arm is tiny, and the burden on a person to carry a pregnancy and give birth to a child you don't want is enormous, so they're not comparable. I would say the consequences of failing to vaccinate are to cause harm, including death, to people who are alive and who are sentient and who we all agree have value, whereas abortion causes harm to an embryo or a fetus, and we do not have a societal consensus that embryos and fetuses have enormous moral value.
I was thinking more about vaccines and the social impact.
Okay.
And it occurred to me that if Christopher Columbus and his crew and all the other colonists that came over had been vaccinated, then a lot fewer indigenous Americans would have died of infectious diseases. And we had a whole different history. So that puts in a little bigger perspective.
By saying it's a moral question, I'm saying that it can't be proven or not proven. It's a moral value. People have
I thought if it's a moral question, then some people can be wrong. You mean it's an opinion?
Yes, the opinion is how much moral weight do we grant to embryos and fetuses?
And is there a truth of the matter to that?
No, I think a moral value is by definition something that's not true.
But I think ultimately the decision, and that's how I interpret this question, the decision should still be with the individual, and we should respect that.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. You're good. Give them a round of applause. Good job. Speech is violence. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Slightly disagree.
Violence is anything that causes physical harm to a person, a being, or I guess maybe a material object. So I don't think that speech can cause physical harm. It can certainly incite to physical harm. So speech can cause violence, but that doesn't mean it is violence.
You're still unsure? It's 100% okay to be unsure.
Yeah, I think I am unsure just because this is a very heavy definition statement.
Yes.
And my original thought was, okay, speech can't hurt anybody, so I'm just going to sort of be on this side. But then after considering it more, what if speech incites violence? I think in that situation, we as a society would put some fault on the person who said the words that incited the violence. So given that fault is placed on this person for violence, I think that in this scenario, it's possible that speech could be violence.
If I shouted in a room, like an empty room, to nobody, kill that man, it would not incite any violence. If I shouted in a crowded room of people, kill that man, it might incite violence. I think that it's this, but in both cases, it's the same speech. It's the same words being said. It's the same action, really. And so I don't think you can really call that action violence if the only thing that can make it cause violence are the conditions around it and the choices of the people who you're telling the speech to.
It's a definitional thing then. Speech cannot be violence by definition.
The point of speech is to influence people, and if you're influencing people towards violence, then that's sort of violence.
All right, questions. We got 3 questions. Got 1, 2, and everybody runs for the third. Yeah, that's the attitude. Good.
By definition, abuse is violence. So is verbal abuse violence or not?
Physical abuse is by definition violence. It's physical abuse. I would say that verbal abuse is not by definition violence. No.
And so I know that this is purely a definitional thing, but I was wondering what would compel you to move a bit further in this direction and say,
I should give you the mic.
and just say that that this definition is maybe useful because it's more precise.
Okay, good question.
Yeah, I mean, if we change the definition of violence to be solely something like the final act, like the final contributing act, then I think I would move to neutral.
Well, actually, I wanted to throw the question back onto you because I actually raised this question because
is this your question?
that you are like I raised this claim because this is something that you have talked about in articles and has also been mentioned by other professors. So if you want to answer it.
I'm kicking you guys off. Go ahead. Do to me what I just did to everybody else.
3, 2, 1.
I agree with James. I think first it's a definitional thing. And second of all, I think it is been weaponized to be political because I constantly hear all speech is violence, silence is violence, everything is violence, doing nothing is violence. And I think it is a kind of fast and play way to disingenuinely use language. So you could construct a syllogism. Speech is violence. We have to stop violence. Therefore, we have to stop speech. That's something I hear over and over again. Like we have to. There are certain things we just are not allowed to say. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate coming down. Hopefully, it was fun. You learned something, and you can use it. You can do it in your classes. You can do it in your student groups. And I hope that folks enjoyed that and took something from it. Thank you. Oh, yeah, real quick before we go. Nathan's back there. We're going to do exit interviews.
What did you think about this event?
I thought it was interesting. I thought that some of the discussions were really fun, but that overall the framing was always from a certain point of view and ideological point. It wasn't an unbiased open forum. It was the whole time I felt like Peter was clearly siding with one side, asking them hard questions, trying to argue against them, and then the other side he would go up to them and be like, "Yes, I agree." And it's like you weren't very transparent as a moderator.
I thought it was good. I think some of the phrasing of the questions was a little bit poor, but apart from that, the actual conduct of the event was I think on the whole good. Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. It was honestly different than most other events I went to, so that was cool.
I thought it went really well. I enjoyed listening from different perspectives.
I thought it was very different from other events I've seen at Dartmouth so far. It was a very different setup to what most speakers do here, which was interesting. It was better than sitting for an hour and a half, just sort of watching someone talk at you. Better to talk with someone, even if you're not directly involved. But I think having multiple people voicing an opinion, most likely one of them's going to be somewhat similar to yours, so you're kind of having a discussion with multiple people, even if not directly. So
I thought it was a fantastic format of an event. We've never held anything like this at the DPU, so having people interact with each other in this Jubilee style game was quite interesting. I feel like I learned a lot throughout all of it. Yes.
I thought it was great. It was great to hear students on both sides and to hear the questions and hear how people's opinions change throughout the debate.
Do you feel like you learned anything from this event?
Not really. Maybe I learned the position of my peers on things, but as far as do I feel like I knew more about any of the topics we discussed? No, all the positions people gave were pretty stable.
Okay. Not really, no. I mean, I didn't really have any concrete expectations, so there's nothing that surprised me.
I mean, not particularly. I think that I was surprised about how adamantly people held their beliefs and how unchanging they were. So, yeah.
Absolutely not. I know a majority of the people speaking, and I was like, that sort of fits who they were to begin with. So I wasn't really surprised by anything.
I was surprised at how many different ways people could argue when they sort of sounded the same. I was surprised at how happy people were to change their minds, and people weren't too prideful on that or stubborn on that. So yeah.
I was surprised by the fact that like I wasn't completely certain on my own beliefs when I was participating up there, and a lot of people weren't either. They weren't certain about what exactly they believed in, or like the intensity that they believed that specific statement. So that was cool to see, and I don't think you can actually get anything like that without without someone like Peter going around and asking questions like that. So I thought that was fantastic.
I don't think so. I mean, I think a lot of people had like very clear views to begin with, like either strongly agree or strongly disagree, and those opinions were kind of to be expected. I guess like a few of the people like in the middle, like neutral views, were like different than I expected. Yeah.
Do you think you learned anything from this event?
I mean, I certainly learned, like, I think this format is a good format. It's an interesting format, so I guess I learned that. But in terms of, like, issues and opinions and how to argue, not really, no. The opinions were familiar to me.
I learned which questions sort of got a negative response from people and didn't help, and which questions helped people change their mind. So it was cool to watch people defend their arguments in real time.
I definitely learned that Dartmouth definitely has varying views. And like I knew that to begin with, but I feel like it was more established that people just are always gonna agree and disagree. And I feel like that's like a stereotype that like certain like colleges, especially the Ivies, are more liberal, or like Dartmouth being the more conservative, the Ivies people are gonna lean predominantly more than one way. And as you can see here, based on the various different opinions, that's not really the case.
I learned that if I were ever to have a discussion with Peter Boghossian, I should definitely flesh out exactly what my point of view is and be ready for it to be picked apart. So, yes.
For sure, learned a lot about myself and learned a lot about like how exactly you should measure the value and intensity of your own opinion.
The question about like, is speech violence? It really emphasizes like the importance of having definitions. Like I know a big portion of that debate was about like, can speech be used as violence, or like, is speech itself violence, or is it only violence if it's like heard by other people? So like people bringing up those interesting like cautionary measures when you're having a discussion.
Do you see anything differently now than you did before? If so, what? How has your view changed?
I guess on the issue of race in college admissions, I understand like the side I don't agree with, the side on that we should keep it. I understand it more. I still don't agree with it really, but I sort of have a more complete understanding of the position, I think.
Not really. I feel like these statements, it's the way that they worded, and I felt like everything is really up to context and like the context is being used in, and also there are so many different nuances, and so it's just sort of hard like listening to people's arguments. I had my personal like opinion going in, and I don't feel like that has changed going out.
With a couple of the points, I definitely now understand other people's points of view better. But I wouldn't say that my point of view on them has changed, but I definitely understand more than I did prior to this. Yeah.
Personally, I think that I like after my experience with it, I would like to do more like events formatted just like this, because I feel like I can learn a lot more from a conversation with people than just listening to a speaker speak, or going to like an activist event and listening to someone speak, which I haven't like. It's a way for me, I think, that I can improve my own articulation of my own beliefs. So yeah, I definitely see it in that. It's one thing to like say in like a 1v1 debate, right? And then it's one thing to see like a varying spectrum, which I thought was really nice. Yeah.
How can we improve?
Maybe have more like audience questions. I think those were useful. Maybe have more like direct back and forth. I think to some extent maybe it was a little bit too like monitored by the presenter. I think we could have had more of a direct back and forth, although even that should be moderated so that it doesn't get out of hand.
I think that there was a slight bias of like the speaker who was running it, and in terms of like which questions he challenged and which questions he didn't challenge. And I'm not saying that he's wrong or that this wasn't good for the system. I just think that when people feel like the system is against them, they tend to be more adamantly staying in their position. So maybe like developing a completely fair playing field would help people feel more willing to change their opinions and open to reform.
Honestly, I don't think I have anything to necessarily add to the format of the event. It functioned really well on its own. I would just stick with it, to be honest. Yeah.
I know this goes against your guys' whole, like what you're doing here, you're filming it, which I think is great so other people outside of Dartmouth College can see it. But like I know personally, like I was hesitant to go up and speak just because everything's being filmed. And like when you see a camera or a microphone, it kind of like changes what you're going to say when you realize it's being recorded. So we were talking about like, I'm an ambassador for the Dartmouth Political Union. We were talking about like we should do this style for our meetings, which I totally think is great. Like it gets people to speak. But yeah, like personally, like I didn't go up because of the cameras. So I applaud everybody who had the courage to do so. Yeah. Some of my like fellow Dartmouth Political Union ambassadors and I were talking about this, and originally my stance was like, oh, well, if you truly believe in what you're saying and like you think it's right, like you shouldn't be ashamed of saying it. And I still stand by that, but I think like cancel culture is a thing, and especially on college campuses or like things like with social media can be like so quickly like cropped and thrown into random things. So like if you guys are posting this whole video, the whole hour-long thing, and like people get the context, then I wouldn't be worried about it. But it's like if someone just takes like a 5-second clip of you saying one thing, it can completely change the message. And that's like scary to have that idea of like that like being viral on the internet, like a 5-second clip of you saying something, and it can be totally taken out of context. And so yeah, it's scary. Cancel culture, all that.
And any constructive criticism for Pete specifically?
I do think that in some of his conversations, he did like an uneven number of follow-up questions. I think the follow-up questions are always fair. And if you're going to ask a follow-up, like he asked Jordan a follow-up about, give an example of systemic discrimination that currently exists. Like he didn't ask, at least not that I remember, as many follow-ups of the other side. And I think, just for fairness, it was a fair follow-up, but I think he should have asked a follow-up to the other side too.
I have noticed, knowing like Peter is more of a conservative, like right-leaning person, like by nature, like just reading his stuff and knowing who he is. I guess there were just some questions that I did notice were more somewhat biased, but that's natural. There's just naturally going to be biases, and he tried really, really hard to stay neutral, which I did appreciate. Obviously, there were just some that were just more biased because that's just naturally how you're going to ask when that's how you personally believe yourself. So yeah. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.